Hello, leader. Are you ready for some brutal truths about paying people? Sure hope so, because today you'll hear the realities of being a small business owner who's likely overwhelmed when someone asks you for a raise, or when you think about the very important decisions that you need to make about your compensation structure. And while we're at it, let's end the confusion today about how performance reviews fit into all of this. So let's do it. After all, it's in the top 5 hottest topics inside the Leadership Lab and with my one-to-one clients. Are you curious to know what else is on that top 5 list? Go ahead and DM me on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and I'll give you the scoop. Welcome to the Stacking Your Team podcast. This podcast is for anyone looking to strengthen their leadership skills and build a high-performing team. I'm your host, Shelli Warren. Leading people can be tough, but it's a skill we can all continue to develop. You already know that whether your workplace is big or small, people are your greatest asset and often your largest expense. That's why you take your role seriously and want to keep growing as a leader. You'll find that each episode is designed to provide practical solutions that you can apply immediately. So let's dive into today's episode with a couple of quick reminders. No one escapes team troubles, including me, and the team that got you here may not be the team that will get you there. Well, hello. I'm happy you joined me today for this specific episode because it shows me that 1, you care about how you spend money inside your business, and 2, you care about paying people well, but also you don't want to waffle on what you expect for that payment. I mean, come on. You've likely had people on your team that you felt were being overpaid. That's not a good feeling. You may start to wonder if you're being duped. Now, I'm not talking about someone returning from mat leave or an extended health crisis and they're easing back into their normal duties and normal level of contribution with the plan. I'm talking about people who have drifted off their peak performance, and maybe they never really did peak, and you've continued to pay them really well. This happens for a few reasons. You might resonate with these. You hired the person too quickly and without a thorough interview or reference check process, and now you're realizing that they have some significant skill gaps, yet you're continuing to pay them. Or you've had someone on your team for a while now, maybe even years, and they're having difficulty keeping up with the pace or the technology or the demands from your clients and customers. Yet, you're continuing to pay them quite well. Or you have a person in a role that was defined as one way based on the needs of the business at the time when they joined you, but the business has shifted and it now requires more of them. It's become apparent that they're not a good fit any longer. They spend most of their time pushing back instead of leaning in, and yet you continue to pay them rather well. Okay, let's stop right here for a minute. You know that it's time to end this ridiculous cycle of being disappointed, providing feedback, tolerating it, hoping things will improve, and yet continuing to pay them rather well. What's missing is a set structure of how you will pay people and why, complete with visuals that tell a story about how the person will stay a valuable team member for years to come. Let me show you how this typically lands for my clients. My clients are just like you, tired of expecting an outcome and sometimes being delighted and other times being disappointed. They want consistency in their team's performance with outputs and attitudes that they can rely on. They also want team members who are great at what they do and also enjoy doing it. They want to build a team that is thriving right now and also set to thrive in the future because they want to. So how do we make this happen? Well, it starts by creating some structure inside your business that clearly shows the pathway to success for each member of your team. Now, some of this might make you feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. My clients are usually uncomfortable with this too, but I remind them that a bit of discomfort is how we make a paradigm shift that is meaningful and lasting. I'm also right there alongside them to work through the details. So are their peers who have similar concerns and similar stresses, and they never have to do it alone. And one thing is for certain, once the structure for compensation and performance reviews are set up in their businesses and they integrate it, they no longer feel overwhelmed by it. Suddenly, they have another asset built into their business that becomes a great foundation to attract top talent and then keep those amazing team members for years to come. Okay, let's start with some principles that I encourage my clients to embrace, and now I'm encouraging you to do it as well. The first one, just because someone asks you for a raise doesn't mean you have to give it to them. Now, this happens a lot, and over time, the team can become entitled and demanding. You can find yourself dipping into profit each month to cover payroll. This also leads to a terrible position whereby you've outpriced yourself in terms of pay that you provide your team. You don't want to be the business that pays your teams the highest wages in your region. No, you want to be the second or the third top employer. Let someone else set the bar for maintaining those high wages while you pay well and round it out with other forms of compensation that create a compensation package that's desirable instead of straight up money that if you don't have a solid plan for increasing profits at a high percentage year on, you're going to find yourself outpriced and totally risking the future of your business. The second principle is hosting compensation reviews. It's its own separate activity that requires planning. Now here's the deal. Having the money talk with someone deserves its own conversation that includes facts, figures, and proof that the business can support the current compensation plan and any changes that might be proposed. Secondly, I coach my clients to set a drumbeat for this and stick to it. Preferably, they select a time of year that is slower, that allows you and your leadership team time to gather the information, pull together an aligned message, create the visuals, set the agenda, and then book the one-to-one times to share the update with everyone involved. Next, you want to make sure that your standard of living increases fall into your compensation review. And hey, did you know that when you link raises to years of service, you are setting a precedent for everyone on your team that they're entitled to more pay on their work anniversary date, regardless of whether they're meeting or exceeding your expectations or not. You know, this can all be avoided when your team knows the time of the year that compensation reviews take place. Here's the next principle. Hosting performance reviews is its own separate activity that requires planning. You heard me mention that about compensation reviews because they're two different activities. So similar to hosting the money talk, hosting the performance feedback talk also requires facts, examples, and proof of former feedback sessions so that you're not blindsiding someone or stacking on feedback that you've been holding in a container and you're going to pop the lid all at once, only one time a year. Nothing frustrates people more than a leader who stockpiles feedback and then rolls it all out in one fell swoop, even if it is all positive feedback. Great leaders know how to share feedback during one-to-ones all year long. The fourth principle is you don't make the decisions about pay, benefits, or bonuses. The needs of the business dictate what it is prepared to support and what it cannot. Now, you've probably said things like, I can't afford to give you a raise right now, or I'm happy to give you a bump in pay this year, or I feel bad that I can't give you a raise right now. Let me remind you, it's not you. It's the business is at a point now where we can support an increase for you. You're not giving the raise, the business is. Okay, Let those principles digest for a minute while you get ready for some brutal truths about compensation and performance reviews. Truth number 1, asking for more money freaks people out, even when they're adamant that they deserve it. Now, in our current war on talent, many team members have had to step up and take on additional responsibilities due to high team turnover and high availability issues, such as team members ghosting or abandoning their roles, or team members who are excessively unavailable for work. So I get it. So do you. You see them doing more, and it's only a matter of time till they ask you for a raise. I coach my clients, and I'm encouraging you right now to have a contingency plan for this in advance of asking someone to take on more responsibility for an extended period of time. Secondly, this war on talent has also led to many people feeling incredibly entitled, and they will demand a raise or even threaten to leave if you don't comply. And I want to remind you that anyone who threatens to quit if you don't give them a raise, when you know darn well you are providing more than the local standard wage and compensation package, is no longer a fit for your team. It is time to let them go. The key here is to be aware of what the local job market will bear, rather than having someone tell you that their cousin in a similar role in a different part of the country is making X amount of money. And hosting compensation reviews, they can be tense. Expectations are high, and if the needs of the business cannot support any pay increases, you can tell yourself a story that, I failed my team. You know, not every business can sustain annual raises beyond the standard of living allowance. It's okay to be transparent with your team and also ask them to help you strategize and come up with a plan to improve revenues and profits moving forward. And it's okay to put a salary cap on a role or a number of roles until growth metrics and milestones have been reached. People might not like it, but it can also be motivating to get the right people involved in growth strategies that will ultimately lead to long-term viability for everyone. And the next truth is, performance reviews make team members lose sleep the night before. They can also lose sleep the night of, depending on how much negative feedback you shared with them. You too can lose sleep, worrying about what to say and how to say it. However, every team member has the right to formal feedback, at least once a year. And that feedback needs to be well thought out, including examples, shared in a private setting, with documentation, and an action plan that outlines their next best step. This is how we hold ourselves accountable to be better leaders, and also hold our team accountable to improve their performance. So here's the thing. Compensation and performance reviews have historically been linked to one another, meaning the team member expects to be told what their raise was going to be after they receive the performance feedback in the same meeting. But why? Doing a thorough performance review, sometimes referred to as a performance appraisal, takes time and thoughtfulness. People will notice feedback that's AI generated. They'll also notice if the feedback is pencil whipped, meaning it's superficial, a copy-paste from last year's review. And they will definitely notice when there's no substantive feedback. So back up your feedback with proof, both the positive and the negative stuff. Share examples, testimonials, and quotes. Now, I recommend to my clients, and I'm recommending to you right now, that the performance review be completed first, followed a few months later with the compensation review. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll want to choose a window of time that is deemed your slow period to ensure you and your team leaders have ample time to do a great job of both. And when you set up a drumbeat for these two key activities that affect your team and your bottom line, people will stop asking for a raise because they know the time of the year that they'll hear about any changes to compensation. And you can demonstrate that you care for your team by hosting regular one-to-ones or implementing a leadership team that will be responsible for these. When your team members have regular opportunities to ask for and get performance review feedback, it makes so much more sense when their annual performance review is shared with them. If you found today's episode helpful, would you share it with a friend? Or tag us on Instagram at Stacking Your Team, or leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. And hey, did you know that over at the Stacking Your Team website, we have so many awesome free resources for you over there? So get on over there. Don't miss out. Everything we do at Stacking Your Team is designed to help you strengthen your leadership skills and build a high-performing team. I'll see you online or next week, right here in your podcast app.